Hi, and welcome back to SOS Stories of Survivors. I'm your host, Serina Dansker, and today's episode is one that is really hits your heart. We talk about grief, but not just grief when you lose someone. Grief that occurs long before the loss, where your soul just knows. And I'm honored today to be joined by a very special guest, Debbie Gail Zane. She's a grief educator, a coach, an author whose life changed forever after losing her son Alex, following a long battle with mental health and addiction. And through her journey, Debbie's turned her pain into purpose. She helps other parents navigate grief and loss, fear and healing. Debbie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me to come on your show, Serena.
Uh, um, I would just want to start with talking about your story. Can you share a little about Alex, maybe who he was? What was his passions? What made him smile?
Yeah, so Alex was my oldest of three children, and gosh, he really had a lot of passions. He was such a wonderful, unique, interesting kid growing up. He started loving soccer at a young age, and we kind of just went on this whole soccer journey throughout his childhood where he kind of went into travel soccer, and we went to all these tryouts and all these practices and meets and traveled all over. And it was his passion. Like, I remember one tournament where it was in overtime and he kicked the winning goal, and the team lifted him up in the air, and I was like, oh my God, as a mom, like, tears were like streaming down my face.
Oh my God, that's
I
beautiful.
feel like I get emotional now thinking of it. Like, I can still picture it in my mind. And he was always and then in high school he started doing track and cross country, and I loved going to all of his meets because when I was in high school I did track and cross country, so I was like reliving it through him. And I remember, like, when he first broke, like, I forgot, like a 5-minute mile, he broke that eventually, and like I remember, like, tears and everything. And um it was just, he was such a he had a lot of friends. And even even throughout, like, his whole life, he always was like that person who made friends everywhere with people he met in school, and like when he was older, even people, homeless people, um Uber drivers, like, literally befriended everyone. And yeah, and then he also had this other passion where he loved studying genetics. He learned about, he would take this like 23andMe and like use that result, and then he wanted me to do it and use those results. And he kept, like, he'd be in all these chat rooms with professors and learn about how to interpret them. And he was so knowledgeable. And he loved it. And then he also had this passion. You can tell he's a very passionate person. He had a passion for religions, but not one specific religion. Like he kind of tried them all out. And he would really delve deep into the religion and learn about it so much. And if it was one where you would be baptized into it, he would become baptized. And he would just go all into it. And I think it really helped him actually throughout his life with some of the challenges we'll get into. Like, I think having that, it kind of kept him grounded. And I feel like I feel like it just really helped him a lot throughout his life.
Oh my gosh. When did things begin to change for your family?
Yeah, it really was really sudden. It was he was in his senior year of high school. So he had turned 17 over the summer. And this was like November, and it literally came out of the blue. It was Thanksgiving weekend. I think it was like the day after, either Friday or Saturday. And in the evening, he I remember sitting in my bedroom, and he came to me one evening, and he said that he described how he had wanted to kill himself, and he um, told me that he had attempted it, and he told me exactly how, and it took every ounce of strength in me to not, like, you know, go, just fall apart in front of him. Like, I knew he trusted me to come to me, to share this, and so I wanted to, hear him, listen to him, um, be there for him, and not, not react in any type of, not, just be there and be supportive, but not like it was too much for me that I couldn't handle, because I was a single mom, raising three kids by myself. And so, I just, I just stayed calm, even though inside it was really difficult. And, together we called, our family, doctor, and she had like an on-call number. We were able to speak to her. She was able to have like somebody at a, he wasn't 18 yet, so it was a psychiatric hospital that would also take minors as well, like teenagers. And so she had them give us a call. So they talked to both of us, and then they wanted to talk to Alex alone. And I remember going downstairs and letting him have some time. And, of course, that was like, it felt like forever. And, that was sort of the beginning of what was to come. And it was the beginning of a month-long hospital stay, where he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, which at the time I did not have any idea what that was. There was no warning signs that I could tell that had come before, and so this was really you know very very big, for our whole family. His
What does that diagnosis mean? I'm not a medical girl.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cross. They use it when you have symptoms of both, bipolar, which is a mood disorder. So you would have like the depression and the mania, like the highs and lows. And then you also have symptoms of schizophrenia. So then you're having, he had, for instance, paranoia. He had hallucinations, both auditory and visual. So it's kind of like a cross between the two. And so I guess that's where they came up with the term. But basically, it's just kind of, he had symptoms of both schizophrenia and bipolar. And so, during that hospital stay, because he was a minor, they did have a lot of programs and a lot of family meetings. And so I learned, a lot, and I did a lot of research on my own. And yeah, I mean, that was huge. And
what was that like, navigating that? I mean, you're a single mom, you have two other children, and your oldest is suffering.
Yeah, it was really hard because and my other two kids, we were always very close family. So, they were really impacted, and we were also worried about him. And luckily there was visitation when he was there. We all got to visit him, but they were sad. I was sad. We were worried. And yeah, it definitely took a lot of my time to do research and to interview doctors. They told me I needed to find a psychiatrist and a therapist for when he gets out of the hospital. So I was like making calls and interviewing doctors and therapists, and trying to find the right fit, somebody who had experience with this, because back then I don't think it was as common. Now I hear so many more diagnoses of that now, but back then, this would have been 13 years ago, a little over 13 years ago. So, it was not so common. So it was hard to actually find people that had experience.
Well, if you think about just teenagers in general, like the mood swings. I mean, I know as a teenager too, I could have probably easily been diagnosed as bipolar, because I'd have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. it's really hard, when you're going through it and you're in the midst.
Yeah, and his was pretty severe. Like, I mean, when he would get really depressed, he would want to kill himself, and I think he had voices in there too. And then I think the mania, I remember them telling me like that can be really dangerous, a dangerous state to go into, because it's not just like a normal high. It's like almost like, I think because you're like invincible and you can do anything. And
Boy.
he started self medicating with drugs shortly after this diagnosis. So that was really difficult. So, we kind of went into this whole world where I was dealing with, a child who was using all different drugs.
How, how, I mean, what do you wish people understood about parenting a child that has a mental illness, a diagnosed mental illness?
I think the biggest thing is to understand that it's not their fault. It's like you have to realize that, like, and to realize that they are in there. They're still their same soul,
Yeah.
but it's just what's going on with their brain with this addiction and this illness is like causing them to think differently and to feel differently and to come across differently. But they're not their illness, and they're not their addiction, and that's not who they truly are as a core level. And I think that sometimes parents think that they can just stop and be normal and like, okay, I'm fine. And I'm sure that they wish that they could do that just as much as the parents do. Like, you have to understand, like, how would you feel if sometime you just woke up one day and you had these symptoms of hallucinations and depression and mania and severe paranoia that you can't even go anywhere? It would be like,
It's daunting. I mean, it's because you don't know where it's coming from. You
instead of seeing your child as like weak, actually see them with that they're strong to be able to endure hour after hour of this, and to have like more compassion. Like, they don't want this any more than you want it for them. And yeah, it disrupted your life as a parent, but you know what, it disrupted their life too. Not only were your hopes and dreams for them crushed, their own were crushed too.
Oh my gosh. And what about like the impact, like as a mom? I mean, you have your carpools, you deal with other moms. How did that impact your way of life, your identity as his mom? You know?
Yeah, it was definitely really hard because he was the oldest. So I had two. They were all two others. They were all 20 months apart. And especially my youngest, she was into the travel soccer. And then she was into the competitive cheerleading. So I had to travel around for their stuff too. And so, I had to worry about him being, even though he's getting older. He was 17 when diagnosed, so then he was 18, 19, like, but I still, there's still that concern, like, where is he? Is he using drugs? Like, is he okay? And I think it really impacted the first few years. Were really hard. I feel like I had a lot of sleepless nights, lived in fear a lot. I didn't feel, I think I felt like, not sure the right word, but like, going to the competitive cheerleading things and enjoying that and watching my daughter, but also feeling like I'm like, what are other moms going to be thinking of me? Because I have this other older child at home who is really having a lot of difficulties. And, sometimes, as a parent, we feel like we're going to be blamed for that. And, how can I be in, multiple places at the same time and be there for all of my kids? And, so it wasn't the easiest.
No, no. I mean, as a mom of triplets, I know exactly how you feel, and and they don't have to be the same age. You want to be all things to all the children, and it's so difficult. They all need different things at the same time, and And especially as a single, at least I had my husband, to help. You were a single mom, so it all fell to you. And God bless you, just going through it all and being able to tell your story. I have so much respect for you. I really, really do. Oh my God, it must have been so hard, and your own mental health must have suffered a little bit too, going through those feelings and emotions.
Yeah, I would say the first few years were the hardest because I really hadn't figured out how to handle this and have any sort of peace at all in my life. And I think that, like I said, I had a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of worry, a lot of fear, a lot of stress. And I basically lived in fear of, the next shoe is going to drop because there were times where I almost lost him to drug overdoses, to suicide, to him wanting to commit suicide. And it was like, it was hard. I think it was about, I don't know, it was a few years into it where I had realized that I wasn't living my life. I was just barely surviving, and I wasn't really present. I wasn't really present to be able to like enjoy the good times with him and all the good times with my other two children. I was just consumed with fear and worry. And when you're doing that, you're not present. You're like, if you're worrying about what might happen in the next shoe that's going to drop, you're in the future. And so I was able to really change things for myself and to find peace and to be able to come to some stage of acceptance. And people think acceptance means that like you're okay with it or you wanted it or something. It doesn't. It just means it's just a degree of peace that you can come to, that you're accepting that this is what's happening. Like I can't change this. I can change my response to it, my reactions to it. I can change within me, but I cannot change this external circumstance. And I stopped trying to focus on things I couldn't control, and started focusing on things that I did have control over. Started focusing more on my love for him rather than my fear about him.
Wow.
And also, a big thing is like, I think that when there's a fearful situation, we get into this situation where we're like craving more certainty. Like we want to be certain that like nothing's going to go wrong. He's going to be fine. Nothing bad's going to happen. But we don't have, like, as humans, we just don't have that level of certainty in life. And so what I learned is that I could do two things: is I could focus more on something else instead of certainty. And for me, a big thing was contribution, like helping others. And I had been going to Al-Anon, and I became involved and became a sponsor to others. And I did a lot of stuff with that. Of course, help being there for contributing to my kids in all the ways that I could. Of course, that's a lot of contribution, but really focusing more on contribution, focusing more on the love than on needing certainty, and then giving myself certainty in other ways, like just, predictable things that I could count on for myself, predictable routines I could do for myself, like meditations or, healthy eating, healthy juices, things like that.
That's
So
really good. You're doing that for your body. Talk a little bit about the anticipatory grief, because I don't, I have had experience with that where when my mom was ill, like I knew the end was near, or I think I didn't know in my head, but I think in my soul. I think your soul knows before your head ever catches up. Can you talk about that?
yeah, I think that that happen the anticipatory grief can be present a lot of times when a parent is dealing with a child who has a severe mental illness and addiction, because you just don't really know what's going to happen. And so I think that what happens is it's twofold. Is I think first you kind of go through a process of, for me, it was almost like I was grieving him before he passed away. It's almost like I had two griefs, like, because I remember just kind of going back through, like, while he was still alive, like going back through from his childhood, from early, like very early, and just remembering those memories and like all the years that, like, we did all these wonderful things and his track and soccer and all this stuff. And it's like at first I feel like it was grieving that that was not our lives anymore. Our lives had had this profound change when he was 17, and you know became, his brain was kind of taken over by this illness. And so there was that grief, and it's just kind of strange because I didn't even realize at first what I was doing. um, and then when I looked back on it, I realized what was going on for me is this grief and this grieving. This, that was the first step. Is like grieving the life that we had and the trajectory that it would have probably continued had this illness not taken over. And so I think that was a really big grieving process for me. Um, and
About how day to day it gave you that anxiety and that because you were living in the future. But does it change how you feel about your child, how you love your child?
No, because for me, I didn't let it. So then I came to sort of the other stage of grief where I was kind of describing, where I was like worried that like he's not going to live long, like something's going to happen. Like, because there were numerous times, which I do write about in my book, where um, we almost lost him a number of times, and I felt like it was a miracle that we didn't. And so I had this level of grief about, like, I think, like you put it, anticipatory grief, like he's still here, but there's that we don't know how long he's going to be here. And that's the key, is not letting it interfere with your relationship with him. Because the thing is that I was able to enjoy him and be present with him no matter what. And I say no matter what because as he went through his 20s, almost every time my kids and I all got together for a family gathering, almost every time he was not completely sober. And yet we just accepted him. And I think also in the later years, he had some degree of memory issues and probably brain damage. He had a lot of seizures and used a lot of drugs. And so we were used to him sharing the same things, the same stories over and over and over, even in the same gathering. And so, but we were able to just be present with him and enjoy him. And that was, I think that's the biggest thing that I want parents to know, is that it's not going to help if you just worry so much about what might happen, because it's not going to make you more prepared in any way. And in fact, if you can let go of some of that and more focus on the moment and enjoying what you do have. And I always think of it as, focusing more on the love than the fear and the grief. And I even look at that even in grief after they pass away. But then you can enjoy them and be present, and because you can't, you can't get those moments back.
Can you, if you're okay with it, can you talk about the day
Mhm.
that everything happened?
Yeah, yeah. So it was the beginning of January of 2022, and interestingly enough, we had just gotten together on the 1st of January, my kids and I, and we were remarking about how Alex seemed happier than we've seen him in a long time, and that we thought it was the first time we had seen him sober in years. And so we felt like really, hopeful, like, oh, maybe his health is turning around and he's, it's getting better. He's not anyway. So we had a wonderful gathering, and we all hugged goodbye and said, I love yous. Um, and, my kids headed home, and it was, I think 2 days later, there was a big snowstorm. Um, and where I was living out in the country, we had no power and no heat all week. And Alex was looking for another room to rent because where he was living had just, the lease was up, and he always waited till the last second to look. And he lived about an hour from me, and he lived not in the country because he didn't drive because of his seizures, and he lived where he could walk everywhere, and near where he went to church and everything. And so he promised he'd find a place soon, and he asked if I could pay for him to stay at it was like a residence hotel or something. And so I was transferring money daily for him because he kept saying he's going to find a place. So every morning he would text me and say, okay, can you transfer more money? And so it got to be Wednesday, and I still had no heat, no power, and I was like, it was like 40 degrees in my house, and I had forgotten in the morning that he didn't text me. And it got, I started trying to call him and text him, and I couldn't reach him. So I reached out to his siblings to see, have you heard from Alex? And everybody hadn't, and tried to reach him. I called the hotel, and they said he checked out. I'm like, what do you mean he checked out? He doesn't have a place yet. And of course, they didn't have any information. And I think I called the hospitals, and we called around his siblings and I, and it was we couldn't. We weren't sure. Now, there's been other times in his life where, as you can imagine, with the drugs and alcohol use, where we couldn't reach him too. So it wasn't
unusual. Yeah.
Right. It was just that, and he did have a number of friends, and it could be true that he could, crash at somebody else's place for the night. But we still tried really hard to just figure out, like, where is he? And I think the other complication is the rest of us all got sick that week after our gathering. So I was dealing with that, and dealing with a freezing house and the snowstorm. But anyway, so the next morning, Thursday morning, I was under a mound of covers, still in my bed, because that was the only place I could be. And I got a phone call about 9 a.m. and the voice at the other end asked if, is this Debbie, are you Alex's mom? And I said, yes. And he's like, I am so sorry to do this over the phone, but with the snowstorm and how far you are living, he said, I'm sorry to tell you, but your son Alex was found dead this morning. And I think that I just remember, like, that was the moment my world fell apart.
What happened inside you at that moment?
Oh my gosh, like I wasn't even, I think I felt even like I wasn't even in my body anymore. I think I felt that I just felt like the whole world fell apart in that moment. Everything that I knew. He was my oldest, and before he had got sick, he always kind of helped all of us, and how could he be gone, and how could this happen? Like, I also felt like he survived all these other times, he almost died. I didn't know at the time, how he died, but I was like, well, there were so many other times he almost died, and he didn't. He made it. Like, why didn't he make it this time? And
Right.
I remember asking the officer, "Can I get my parents on the phone?" And I dialed my parents and put them on the call so that they could absorb more of the info. I
Right.
think I couldn't really absorb anything. Um, and then after the call, I got my kids on the line and told them, and we were all crying. My parents, my kids, me. Um, it was like one of these things, like you're not there. Like, this is a dream and this couldn't be happening. It's like, and I did learn later about how, like, parts of your soul can kind of leave your body to protect your soul from injury.
Mm.
But it is this weird feeling, like an outer body experience. And my I don't know what I would have done if it wasn't for my parents went the next day to the funeral home to, like, make arrangements and work on everything. And um they were gonna, they were the autopsy, because for a young person,
Yeah.
wasn't an evident cause of death. There was a lot of empty alcohol bottles, but there was not like an obvious cause. So they always do like an autopsy. And then my daughter lived, even though she was sick, she lived only a few minutes away, and she was able to go to the hotel and pick up his stuff that he had there. Um, and of course, we later found out, of course, he didn't check out. He was found in the hotel.
Oh, boy.
I think just due to the snowstorm, they were in the roads, not being that passable. They just weren't busy, so they didn't clean out that room, and he didn't pay for another night, so they just processed it as a checkout. I don't know. But yeah, it was just, that was just the most difficult time.
What did those first days, months, weeks look like for you? Getting, what was the hardest part getting through this?
Yeah, the early time, I really did everything from my bed. My bed was my safety zone. I mean, I can even remember, when I started working again, I was working from my bed on my laptop. I even wrote a good amount of my first book from my bed. It was my safe zone, and I would even get up and try to make, like, some kind of meal that would last for the week, and so that I minimized my time out of bed so that I could just go get my food. I'd come back and eat my food in my bed. Like, literally, my bed was like my mini world. It was my comforting zone, I would say, that helped me. Um, and I remember it took me a little bit of time to be ready to go and pick out. My daughter and I went together to pick out, like, the gravestone and everything. Like, we had to pick all this thing, and in the early weeks and everything, decisions, even small decisions, felt like too much.
Yeah.
And I remember we sat there and we had to decide all of these things: engraving, writing, what to say, little symbols. And I think Alex was speaking through both of us, because we were looking at these books and we would both come up with exactly the identical of what was going to be. So I think Alex really helped us through, like, okay, this is what I want. He wanted angels. We had angels on his tombstone. Like, um, he helped us so much. And
I love that. I love that.
and I also felt, oh my gosh, I felt his presence talking to me so much in the early weeks. He used to have this thing that um, he would call me many times saying, "Hey mom, it's Alex," because he'd be calling from someone else's phone or from the hospital phone, or something happened and he broke his bone or he had a seizure in the hospital, and he wanted to make sure I know who he is because he's calling from a different line. So he'd say, "Hey, Mom, it's Alex." So for like a week or two, I kept hearing, "Hey, Mom, it's Alex. Hey, Mom, it's Alex. Hey, Mom," until I figured out what he was trying to tell me. And it was just the same as what he was trying to tell me when he was calling when he was alive, to tell me that he is okay. And as soon as I figured out that he was telling me that he was okay, it stopped. And
Oh my God. You're going to make me cry even more.
and then I was so sad when it stopped, because that was like my connection to him. But as time went on, I later learned that my connection with him was the foundation of how I was going to get through a loss like this. That it was my love for him, and the love that that he and I shared, and connecting with that was going to get me through. And I remember um, a few months after he died, still doing everything from my bed and opening an email about a writer's workshop, not knowing why I opened that email, because I still didn't really have the capacity to listen to things and absorb them. But I signed up and I did it, and it was virtual. And by the end of the 4 nights, I knew that I was going to write a book to help other parents who had a child with mental illness or addiction, to help them to not feel alone. And I, started writing. I joined the Hay House Book Writer membership because it was a Hay House boot camp, and I started writing my book. And that all of it's a memoir, so all the stories I shared, it all flowed from Alex. So writing my book connected me so much with him, because it literally, everything just flowed. Like, I don't always have the best, most detailed memory, but everything of what I needed to share in that book, I was able to remember in great detail from him. And so um I learned, and I, woke up one day and I just realized, like, that my purpose is to help, to be there for other parents that have gone through a similar journey to mine. And to be able to help them to not feel alone. And that was part of the reason for my first book. And the book I'm working on now is the grief when you've lost a child. And a big part of that is what's helped me is, instead of looking at it as a journey of grief, looking at it as a journey of love. And I think that's where it's also really helped me so much, that while he was living, I was able to find more peace and presence for myself, and to enjoy the moments with him, and not feel like he has to be sober, he has to be perfect, he has to be healthy to enjoy those. Because if I waited, I would have been waiting forever maybe. And instead, I had these beautiful memories with him that I could cherish and hold on to. And so I feel like if you kind of bring in that love, it helps so much with the grief.
Your mindset from I guess fear to peace, it seems. And how did that help you heal? I know you're talking about that a little bit, but what did it mean to you to choose that peace, that love, over the fear of what was to come?
Do you mean when he was still living?
Well, I think your mindset. I'm not sure if it was. I think you talked about you're choosing peace over fear,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if it was because of the pain from his passing or the.
Oh, well, I think it played a role in both. So, I mean, with his passing, I think the biggest thing is bringing in the love, because, like, again, and there is some similarities in that. I had talked about early on when he was first diagnosed, how I had this really high need for certainty that everything will be okay. I went through that again when he passed away as well. I think when you lose one child, then you suddenly become like, oh my God, I remember I was like, the day of the funeral, I was afraid to leave my other two kids. Like, I kept hugging them goodbye and going back and hugging them goodbye. And I had this like really high need for certainty again. And again, it was like dealing with that in similar ways. And bringing in, for me, a big thing has been bringing in the love. And because we can focus on the grief or we can focus on the love. And early on, both can bring about a lot of sadness because, as you know, when it's really early on after a loss, even looking at pictures and thinking of memories can really sometimes feel like too much. And I feel like sometimes you go through this almost like denial stage where your body like protects you because maybe you're not ready for all of those emotions quite yet. But eventually you will be, and you will start to feel more emotions, which is why sometimes people don't understand why, especially somebody who didn't have this type of loss, they might not understand why a year into it, you're actually maybe feeling sadder. And they might think like, okay, it's been longer, why are you not feeling better? And they don't really understand. um, so you're going to feel more of your feelings, but if you can bring in love as much as you can on this journey, because it is a journey, it's not going to be like, oh, I reached this point and I'm fine and I'm done and I'm not grieving anymore. And so if you're going to see this as like, oh my gosh, this is grief and it's so heavy and I'm going to feel this forever and I'm never and when am I going to be done? It's a whole different thing than when you look at it is this is a journey of love, and how can I honor my son? How can I honor his memory? How can I keep the love alive? What can I do to what are some rituals I can bring in that makes him a part of my daily living, and the holidays, like what can we bring in of rituals to honor him? And what can I do in my life that is, I feel like when I speak to people about this, when I've like appeared on media and helped other people, I feel like, or even done book signings, I feel like Alex is always with me. So I feel like this is a team effort. He always liked to help people, but he had a hard time because of his illness. And I feel like it's a team effort. He and I are working together. And so it's not to say that I'm not going to have my days where I'm like, just like, I mean, I remember just the other day, like, his picture is like all over my home. And I was just like looking at his picture and being like, Alex, I just miss you so much. Like, I just wish you were physically here, right? Like, you're still going to have that. It's not going to go like, it's been just over 4 years for me. And, you know, you're not, you're not looking for that to go away. You're looking to be able to integrate this loss into your life. And how do you do that? Well, you can do that with love. You can do that with bringing in the love that you shared with your child to fill that void. And you can doing with connecting with your child on a regular basis, doing things to honor your child. um, I like to do special things on like his birthday or, the anniversary of his death. I saw you did like a video clip memorial. I loved what you did, Serina. That was so beautiful. It's just like when you do these things, you're honoring them. And like I made the most recent January 5th was the 4-year anniversary of Alex's passing, and I made a photo collage, and I made it digitally online, and then I ordered one for my other two kids, for myself and for my mom. And everybody loved it so much. Mine's up on my wall, and so you can do these meaningful things, and but there's going to be like holidays are going to be harder, like Mother's Day if you're a mom, Father's Day if you're a dad, like you know um but
What?
try to do things to honor them.
Yeah, well, that's good, and I know that you also, started sharing your story and helping other parents. And talk a little bit about that on that part of your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've done a number of different things, I guess, here and there. I've volunteered at local treatment centers on and off, like for parents groups, and I've led breakout sessions to help parents. Um, I have a I've done some coaching. I'm a certified life and relationship coach, and I also have a certified grief educator through David Kessler's program. So I've worked with parents like on a one-on-one virtually. I've done some like virtual workshops. Um, I have done yeah, like I've spoken like on Mother's Day and stuff. I've done some media interviews talking about like how to survive like Mother's Day or like
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, how to survive the
What
holidays.
what do you think grieving parents need most right now, or what would you say to a grieving parent? Because a lot of times you, as a grieving parent, you have the what ifs and the or I should have's and the guilt.
Oh yes, that is a huge. That's actually a whole chapter. I'm writing another book now for the grieving when you've lost a child, and there's a whole chapter on the if onlys and the what ifs, and oh my gosh, because we do this to ourselves. We do this. So the what ifs and the if onlys, like like we think we somehow had all this power that had we have done something differently it would have turned out differently. But like we don't have that type of power over somebody else. We have that type of power over our own like thoughts and our body and stuff. But we don't have that. And it is, I think, as a parent, it is a phase that we go through. But and so then we can start to feel, like you said, have some of that guilt, and to really be gentle with yourself and kind to yourself. I mean, be your own best friend. What would you say if your best friend came to you and was blaming herself and felt guilty? I mean, what would you say to them? Say something similar to yourself. Have compassion. You've just gone through, the most difficult thing that a parent is gonna go through, and you want to have some, um, compassion for yourself.
It's so hard, it's so easy to forgive someone else, but it's so much harder to give yourself that grace and to forgive yourself for not being perfect, and
It
it,
really is. I mean, yeah, because I started going through like, oh my gosh, like, during my pregnancy with Alex, I was very, very ill, and I was on like a home IV. And, back then they were like, oh yeah, this is perfectly safe. I mean, I was on it because I was literally going into dehydration because I was so sick and I was in the hospital all the time. So, they said I needed it, but I started wondering, like, oh my gosh, maybe if I wasn't on that, he wouldn't have had this illness, and like he would have been fine. And
rabbit hole, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, we can just go down. We can just start rethinking everything. Like, well, what if I did something different, or what if I just did this? And the thing is that you did the best that you could with the information that you had whenever you made any decisions in life. And, I do know that I loved Alex with my whole heart, and I did my best as a mom to him with everything I knew how. And I just, I had to come to terms with that. But it was certainly it was certainly a phase I went through, Serena.
I know, and it's like, so many people, more people than I ever realized are part of this club. I call it a club. It's the club nobody wants to belong to. It's the Grieving Parents Club, and no matter how you've lost your child, it sucks. It really does. And for someone listening right now who may be grieving like we were in the early years, the early days, and feels like that they can't go on, that life has no meaning for them. at this juncture, what would you want them to hear or say to them?
I would invite them to think about the things in their lives that they can hang on to. Like, for example, if they have other children, and wanting, making those moments continuing to be precious moments, and um, or if there's other loved ones in their lives, even if they're not children, and just kind of, you know, life is precious, and we never know how long anyone has, us or our loved ones. And I think that making the most of the time we have, and I do think that if it's really early on, it can really feel, there's different stages. When it's really early on, it's kind of hard to really focus on how that would help you, or, if it, how having that realization of precious moments can be helpful. But it can be as time goes on. And also just knowing that, like, we all have a purpose. And if you're still here, you still have a purpose. Because I know for me, I was like, well, why am I still here and my son isn't? Like, that's not the natural order of things. But if you're still here, you still have a purpose. And so sometimes in grief, and it might not be right away early on, but sometimes that purpose is going to show itself to you, and that can really help you um, get, with life as well, is really kind of connecting with that purpose. But I think just in those really early days, it's a lot about being gentle and kind to yourself, not pushing yourself, and just
No big decisions.
no big decisions. And if you need to live in your bed as a safe zone,
It's okay.
then do it. If you need to eat from your bed, do it. Like, I
Mm.
mean, don't push yourself, don't judge yourself,
I totally agree with you, and change a little bit of the. It's been a little heavy right now, so I'm going to make a what I call the lightning round, a little bit lighter. But what's one word that you would use to describe Alex?
Oh, just one word. I can think of a bunch. Oh my gosh. Okay. Loving.
Mm.
Loving.
One thing grief has taught you.
Hmm. Almost same thing. Love.
Yeah, right.
The power of unconditional love.
Oh, I love that. A moment that you felt connected to him, and I know you talked a little bit about it.
You mean since he's passed, right? Oh my gosh, there's been so many. Like, um, I mean, I would say it was really powerful when he was helping me write the book. I mean, it would literally just flow. Like, that book was channeled. I mean, that was like,
That's awesome. That's so. What brings you peace today?
um, connecting with him, keeping his spirit alive, keeping his love within me, keeping that whole passion alive, and connecting with my other two children that are still here and that I love.
Oh, that's just so beautiful. Debbie, your story is such a powerful reminder that no matter how much pain or whatever we're going through, that there's still purpose. There can be purpose and even peace. Um, Thank you for sharing your heart and your journey. How can people reach you, or what's the title of your book? Where can they find it?
Yeah, my title of my book is Finding Peace and Purpose Amidst the Tears. It is on Amazon. If you look up, you can find me online. My website is under my name, Debbie Gail Zane, and it's got information on my book. It's got like an excerpt you can read from the book, and how to order it, and more about it. More about me if you want to connect with me, or you need help, you want to talk. Um, I'm also on Instagram and Facebook.
Mm. I always close my interviews with one of my son's poems. And as a mom, so often we're their wings or their why, if you will. So I found this poem, and I think it'll be fitting for our stories. And it's called "My 8 Reasons Why." You are my world. You are my life. You are my reason why. You are my love. You are my pride. You are my reason why. You are my thoughts. You are my lies. You are my reason why. You are my queen. You are my lives. You are the reason why. You are my reasons why, and nothing will change my 8 reasons why.
Aw, I love that so much. That's so beautiful.
He just, yeah, he loved to write his poems and his feelings, and the power behind it just it gives me chills, and
Oh,
oh my God. And to our listeners out there, if this episode touched you, please share it with someone who might need it. This is SOS, Stories of Survivors, where we honor the pain, but we also honor the strength it takes to keep going. And remember, you are not alone. Thank you, Debbie, for joining me today. And thank you to our listeners.
thank you so much for having me.
We'll see you next week.